Okay, coming in from this side today. Hey everybody, how you doing? Tekking101 here, and the all-star cast of various assorted berries, which I'm sure you're acquainted with at this point. Okay, so today's gonna be a big video, everybody. Today we're talking about the 20 kings that formed the world government! Woo! But first, a disclaimer before we get into this. Just through the nature of this video, I'm going to have to pronounce, or rather, I'm probably going to mispronounce a lot of foreign words, okay? Because there are people's names and location names that Oda has taken from all over our planet Earth and has incorporated into the One Piece world, okay? Especially when it comes to the various kingdoms, the kings and the queens that attended the Reverie, and we're going to be referencing a lot of those today, alright? So, I did my best here. I wrote some of these down like by the pronunciation so I wouldn't screw it up too bad, but still that is probably going to happen. However, something else that you can do because of that, I want you to go get yourself a refreshing beverage. It can be whatever beverage you happen to be in the mood for, you know, non-alcoholic, alcoholic, whatever you're in the mood for. I just happen to have some nice Deer Park water here. But go get yourself a refreshing beverage and have that on standby. And if I happen to mention the country of your origin today in the video, take a drink. Because I'm going to be referencing a lot of places on planet Earth. And I'm actually really excited because geography is everything, okay? So go get yourself that beverage. I'll stay here, hang out, and just talk to bricks, which is typically what I normally do anyway. How you doing, Barry? You doing good today? You doing good? How's the new sweater treating you? That's good? Oh, that's really snazzy. Clone Barry, how you doing with the Christmas sweater? That's nice. Panda Barry's back there. I'm just talking to a bunch of bricks. This is really weird. This is a weird place to find my life in. Okay, so you good? You got your drink? Okay, let's go. All right. So, the 20 families that started the world government. I don't think I need to explain to you this story, but I'm going to anyway in a really dramatic voice to give it some more gravitas. Okay, here's the story that we are told in the One Piece world of how this went down, okay? 800-something years ago, 20 kings from 20 noble royal families all over the world gathered together at one place, atop the Red Line in the holy land of Marijois, and they pledged their allegiance that not one of them would stand above the others, that they would all work together to form a mighty kingdom that would rule the entire earth fairly and justly. They laid down their weapons before the empty throne and declared, "This is the founding of the world government, where everyone lives happily ever after." Okay, so that's the story. That's the official story. Like, in schools and stuff in the One Piece world, that's the stuff the children are brought up on. That's, like, in the textbook right there. Probably word verbatim, okay? Alright, we later find out that that's all bullcrap, okay? Now, not all of it was bullcrap. The idea of 20 kings coming together and forming an alliance to create the world government, that part was probably true. There were 20 families, there were 20 kings that came together, and they moved to Marijois, and those were the ancestors of the Tenryubito, okay? So the celestial dragons that we see in the One Piece world today are the descendants of those original families, okay? With all except for one, the Nefeltari family, all moved to Marijois, okay? The part of the story that's bullcrap is that there is, in fact, one supreme king that does rule over all of the world, that does sit upon the empty throne in Castle Pangaea atop the Red Line in Marijois, okay? Now, you could say maybe Eam is a ghost, or an alien, or an immortal zombie, or whatever. I like to think that Eam has existed since the Void Century. That's just my personal theory, okay? So maybe it's kind of a deal like the 20 families came together, and they were gonna do this, like, equal thing sort of thing, and then Eam showed up, and he's like, well, no, I'm going to be the one to rule you all. And it's been like that since the Void Century, and so there's a lot of mysteries abound with that, okay? But suffice to say, it's a really interesting concept, you know, these 20 families coming together. So I decided I wanted to make a video talking about these 20 royal families, these 20 kings, and who they were, and, you know, what they did and everything like that. The problem with that was, we only know about, three. We only know about 3, which granted is a little bit more than 10%, but still, maybe not a great basis to do an entire video on. You know what I mean, right? We know that the Nefeltari family, you know, Vivi's family, they were one of the families that came together. However, they decided to not move from their ancestral homeland into Marijois. So, in fact, they decided to stay at Alabasta Kingdom, which means that there's only 19 celestial dragon families that still live in Marijois. They actually don't like the Nefeltari family very much. They're not a fan of Cobra. We know Eam was, you know, interested in Vivi in some way, and Vivi has went missing since the Reverie, so there's a lot of stuff going on there with their family. But in terms of celestial dragon families that we actually know about right now, because if, you know, the timeline went a little different and the Nefeltari family decided to stay in Marijois, Vivi would have, if she would have still been born the same way, would have been a celestial dragon, so that's rather interesting. But they weren't in the current storyline, so in terms of actual celestial dragon families, we know about two. We know about the Rosward family that was introduced at Sabaody with, you know, Saint Rosward and Saint Charlos. Cue the scene where Luffy punches Charlos in the face. Bam! That never gets old. And then we have the Don Quixote family, which, of course, Doflamingo belongs to. Doflamingo's father, Homing, he decided to leave Marijois, but there were other branch members of the Don Quixote family. So Don Quixote Mulesguard, for example, he's a member of the family that still lives in Marijois. The Don Quixote family is still considered a celestial dragon family. It was just Homing and his wife and Roshinade and Doflamingo, the ones that actually left Marijois and went to the lower realm that are not considered celestial dragons anymore. But the Don Quixote family still does have that status. Okay, so aside from the Rosward family and the Don Quixote family, that's it. So if you even include the Nefeltari family here, that's still 17 other families, 17 other kings that formed an alliance during the Void Century that we know nothing about. So every time I sat down to kind of try to do this video, I'm like, well, I can't do it because we only know 3 of them, right? And we can't even do it based on the current kings that rule these countries, because like what happened when the Don Quixote family left Dressrosa, what did they do? They left it in the hands of the Riku family, because that's what happened, okay? 800 years ago, 19 families just up and left their ancestral homelands and their kingdoms. They had to leave other families in order to, you know, continue on those kingdoms. So the Don Quixote family ruled over Dressrosa before the Void Century, and then the Void Century happened. The Don Quixote family moved to Marijois, and then they trusted the Riku family to rule over it, which continues to this day. Yeah, there was that little flourish where Doflamingo came back and ruled over it, but the Riku family's in control of it again, so that's good. So the Riku family, you can't include them because the Riku family was not one of the 20 families. They were one of the replacements. Same thing with like King Elisabello II from the Prudence Kingdom. Same thing. Those are the kings that exist right now, not the originals. So we can't even go that route with it. However, one thing that we can do, and with the Reverie we actually got a lot more of these kingdoms revealed, we can't go by the current kings or queens of these nations, but we can go by the kingdoms themselves, okay? Because even though the Don Quixote family left Dressrosa, the Dressrosa kingdom still continues to exist. So let me put it another way, okay? The Nefeltari family ruled over Alabasta, so Alabasta Kingdom was one of the kingdoms that created the world government. Same thing with the Dressrosa Kingdom, okay? So you see where we're going with this. Instead of going through the individual kings, I'm going to go through the kingdoms that we know about that exist in One Piece, the current kingdoms that exist, and which ones I think were part of this alliance way back in the day to forge the world government, all right? Now, it's something else important to mention how many nations actually are allied with the world government in the One Piece world. We do not know how many nations complete, but we know that there's over 170, okay? The way Spondum said this after, you know, Luffy declared war on them and everything like that right before they shot down the flag. You know, Spondum pointed to the flag on top of the Tower of Law at Enies Lobby. And he's like, do you know what this flag represents? This flag represents the power of over 170 nations. Considering he said over 170, I'm assuming there's somewhere between 171 and 179 nations. Maybe not even that high, because then you think you just round up, right? You think Spondum would just be like, this flag represents the power of almost 180 nations, right? So maybe like 175. Let's just say 175 nations are allied with the world government, okay? However, that does not mean between 175 nations attend the Reverie. It's been stated that only 50 nations attend the Reverie, and that's a nice round number, so I'm going to assume there's sort of like a little bit of an exclusive invitation you have to get to the Reverie. Simply being a member of the world government, simply being an ally, does not mean you're going to get an invitation to the Reverie. And maybe the invitations, they switch out every year or so. Because you have, like, the evil Black Drum Kingdom that Wapple just started up, and he got an invitation to the Reverie, okay? So I like to think maybe in, like, that certain invitations, maybe they shift every year. However, something that I'm pretty damn sure of, the original 20 kingdoms that got together to create the world government to begin with, their kings and their queens would definitely get an invitation to the Reverie, okay? So even though the Nefeltari family decided to stay in Alabasta, Alabasta Kingdom was still one of the kingdoms that created the world government. They're getting an invitation to the Reverie. Dressrosa Kingdom gets an invitation to the Reverie, okay? I'm sure that has to be, like, default, okay? Even though they're ruled over by different ruling families at this point, and there might have even have been things like coups and other changes throughout the years, so maybe even, like, 800-something years ago, one family leaves and entrusts it with this other family, maybe that family got taken out of power at some point. Whatever, but the kingdom is still the same kingdom that started the world government, so they're always going to get an invitation, all right? So I like to think that right here, these 50 kings and queens that are sitting around this massive round table right here, 20 of them do represent the original kingdoms of the world government. There's some that we can exclude right out of the gate. Like I said, the evil Black Drum Kingdom, that was just created by Wapple like a year ago, okay? So that's obviously not one of the original ones. Fishman Island, given the fact that the Fishmen have had such a problem with, the world government to begin with, and the whole slavery thing that started, with the Celestial Dragons and all that, I'm also going to assume that Fishman Island, the Ryugu Kingdom, was not one of the kingdoms that started the world government, considering they're kind of enemies right now. And then the Germa Kingdom. The Germa Kingdom, Judge did not go to the Reverie. He was actually, removed from that, but it was looking like they were going to be considered a kingdom, but I don't think the Germa were around, 800-something years ago. I think it was stated like 300 years ago or some such in the North Blue. That's when the Germa ruled over everything, but I think that happened after the Void Century, so, you can exclude the Germa as well. So with that being said, let's just go down a list here of a lot of other kingdoms that are represented here at the Reverie. So we got the Alabasta Kingdom, Dressrosa Kingdom, Goa Kingdom, Sakura Kingdom, no longer the Drum Kingdom, it is the Sakura Kingdom, headed up by King Dalton I. Then we have Lucia Kingdom, Prudence Kingdom, Kano Kingdom, Bollywood Kingdom, Roshwan Kingdom, Tajin Kingdom, Shishano Kingdom, Lulusia Kingdom, and then we have some rulers of these nations, some kings and queens that we don't know the names of their kingdoms, but we know their names, like T the Fourth and Bon de Desine. Apologies. And then we have a bunch of other kings and queens from various locations, various kingdoms that are not given names, and we don't know the names of themselves, so who knows? These could be kings and queens of nations that we have seen or have been mentioned before in One Piece. Like, remember the Briss Kingdom, when the Straw Hats were sailing to Jaya and the freaking giant galleon fell out of the sky, and it was the Saint Briss from the Briss Kingdom. It was 200 years old, but hey, the Briss Kingdom might still exist, and one of these kings or queens might be the rulers of the Briss Kingdom, and they still, attend the Reverie. Hell, the Briss Kingdom could have been one of the 20 founding kingdoms for all we know, right? But something else to base it on, and I know I'm basically building a bridge out of my own headcanon right now, but we're gonna go ahead with this idea. Many of these kingdoms in the One Piece world, Oda bases off of countries from our world, right? Okay, there's some that have been mentioned, but we don't know the reference to yet, so I'm going to assume that the nations that Oda bases off of the nations in our world might very well be the super prominent nations, the countries, the kingdoms that did form the world government, okay? So, for example, we have King T the Fourth right here. Now, we do not know the name of the kingdom that T the Fourth rules over, nor do we know its location in the One Piece world. However, it's pretty damn obvious the kingdom he rules over is based off of the United Kingdom, is based off the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland in our world. He literally has the Union Jack as a bowler hat that he wears. His goatee is literally the hands of a clock, referencing Big Ben, and his name is T the Fourth. Not just any T, British tea. So go ahead and take a drink. There you go, if you're from the United Kingdom. Actually, I'm not from the United Kingdom. I don't know why I'm taking a drink, but yeah. So there you go. And then we got Bande de Dessinée here. Probably mispronouncing her name because it is based off the French term for comics or comic book, okay? Bande de Dessinée. So there you go. She represents the France equivalent of One Piece in the world, okay? Which is also, fun fact, where Louis Leclerc is from the One Piece D&D. He comes from Bande de Dessinée's kingdom, so there you go. So boom, we got United Kingdom and we got France already represented. And considering those are, you know, major countries in our world that Oda took references from to make their nations, I'm going to assume that T the Fourth's kingdom and Bon's kingdom were both kingdoms that came together with the 20 and made the world government. Okay, so I'm going to assume that based on that. All right, so on top of that, we also have some other interesting kingdoms that have a very overt reference to countries from our world. Okay, so get ready. Here we go. So now we have the Rosward kingdom that's headed up by King Beer the Sixth, but this isn't just normal garden variety beer. Oh no, this is Russian beer, because Rosward kingdom is based off of Russia from our world. It's pretty obvious just by their style of dress, and also the princesses of the Rosward kingdom, the daughters of King Beer the Sixth, bear a striking resemblance to the Matryoshka dolls. Yes, the Matryoshka dolls, I believe I'm pronouncing that somewhat close to accurate, which are the nesting dolls, the Russian nesting dolls. You know, one doll goes inside another one, and that's the basis for the princesses, and so then you have King Beer the Sixth. So I'm going to say the Rosward kingdom was also one of the kingdoms that started the world government back during the Void Century. Then we have the Bollywood kingdom, headed up by King Hamburger, who is a combination of the 16th president of the United States of America, Abraham Lincoln, and Uncle Sam. So there you go. There's the reference to the United States. Oh, cool. I get to drink for this one. There we go. So there you go, no, not the Hamburger Kingdom, although that would be fun. So it's a reference that Oda's going with, that all of the kings and queens of these nations are typically named after a popular food from that nation that he's basing it off of. I guess Bande Dessinée is a little different because her name is based off of comic books, or the name for comics in France, but a lot of the other ones are all based off some type of drink or food that comes from these nations, or is very prominent in these nations, okay? So with the Bollywood Kingdom, which Bollywood is a reference to Hollywood, California, where all the big stars are at, right? Until YouTube became a thing. Now we can all be stars. Isn't that just lovely? Fun fact about that, since I'm just talking about it, might as well mention it. Did you know that famous Hollywood sign actually used to say Hollywood Land back in the day? Yeah, I believe it was there for a movie back in the golden age of Hollywood, and after the movie was done, they just kind of left the sign up, and it actually fell into disrepair throughout the 1950s and 1960s. It was just like falling apart on the hillside, and then they decided, you know, that's actually a pretty cool thing. We should fix it up, and it should be one of like the staples, one of the landmarks of, you know, Hollywood, of, you know, Los Angeles, California. And so they put it back up there and they took off the land part, so now it just says Hollywood. But there you go. Hollywood, Bollywood, which Bollywood is actually in India, so, oh, there you go, and take a reference there, and we'll be mentioning India and again in a moment, so don't worry about that, but there you go, take a reference for India. But then we have the Bollywood Kingdom led by President or King Hamburger, so that's the United States. I'm assuming the Bollywood Kingdom was also one of the kingdoms that started the world government, okay? Then we have the Kano Kingdom. Now, the Kano Kingdom, you might know, is actually referenced well before Reverie. This was the kingdom that the Hoppo Navy comes from. So you got Don Chinjiao and Sai, who's the current leader of the Hoppo Navy, as well as with Bu. And then their ruler, their emperor, is Emperor Ramen. And we don't see a lot of the Kano Kingdom, but we see a little bit of it. And the architecture and the way that they dress is very similar to China. So, you know, I'm going to go with the idea that the Kano Kingdom is based off of China, and then therefore also probably one of the nations that started the world government. So we're going from only 3 nations, not even 3 nations, because we don't know the Rosward kingdom. We don't know the kingdom that the Roswalds originally ruled over back in the day. So we only know Dressrosa and Alabasta kingdom, and yet now we're up to, like, you know, 6 or 7. So this is just, yeah, like I said, building a bridge on my own headcanon here. But, you know, considering, let's just go with them too, because I haven't really referenced that yet. So Alabasta kingdom, that's led by the Nefeltari family, Cobra and Vivi, if Cobra ends up dying, that's prominently based on Egypt, from
what we understand from the Rurubu One Piece. However, Oda also takes references from other locations. So there is a city in India called Jodhpur that is, there you go, there's the other India reference, that is the basis for Alubarna. And then Yuba is actually based off of a location in Mali, which is in Africa, okay? So I think the overall premise for Alabasta Kingdom, a desert nation that has one river that goes through it, providing, like, you know, all the sustenance, so like the Sandora River or the Nile River in our world, and also the mythology seems very similar to ancient Egyptian mythology, with a reference to a guardian deity being a falcon, and therefore the falcon Horus, you know, in Egyptian mythology. I think the overall basis for Alabasta was Egypt, but Oda also saw Jodhpur, which is located in India. He liked the design, and he based Alubarna off of that city, and then he based Yuba off of a city or location in Mali, in Africa. So that's kind of what Oda does. He takes various locations. I'm sure Oda just has like a massive geography book that he just looks through, and whenever he sees a location, a castle, a city, a town, a forest, or a mountain range, or anything that really piques his interest, or something interesting from our world, he just, you know, incorporates it in One Piece in some way. But I would say the overall basis for Alabasta is Egypt, with, you know, India and African nations being included in there as well. Then we have Dressrosa, which pretty much is entirely based off of Spain. Some people have said, well, the Colosseum does ring some, you know, ancient Roman bells, you know, for obvious reasons. But overall, I think Oda was basing Dressrosa Kingdom off of the country of Spain. So there you go. Take a drink if you are from Spain or Egypt or India or Mali, I guess. Okay, moving on. Okay, so the Drum Kingdom or the Sakura Kingdom. In Rurubu One Piece, I believe it was mentioned that he took the reference from the Drum Rockies from the Rocky Mountains in the U.S. But considering the fact that Chopper, if it was stated, if the Straw Hats were from, you know, countries in our world, Chopper would be from Canada, and the Rocky Mountains do extend into Canada. Oh, Canada, it is our native land. That's all I know of your national anthem. I apologize. But, hey, I had to look up a lot of national anthems for this video. Mostly the instrumental ones, you know, rather, because I don't think those ones get copyright claimed as much. But, a lot of these have really, really kick-ass national anthems, I have to say. Probably my favorite ones, just in terms of, like, the beat of the national anthem, probably Romania. Romania has a really good beat to their national anthem, okay? So, speaking of Romania, this is King Seki. King Seki rules over the Lulusia Kingdom. This is the kingdom that was attacked by Peachbeard, and that the Revolutionary Army commanders showed up to liberate. It's also the location that Ace showed up during his cover story to look for Blackbeard, and the girl Moda was there, and Ace befriended her and everything. And then Bello Betty used her cheer fruit to, you know, rally the citizens together to fight against, you know, Peachbeard, okay? So that's the Lulusia Kingdom, which seems to be mostly like a forested sort of kingdom, and it's headed by a king that resembles a vampire. And Transylvania is probably the first place you think of when you think of vampires, because of all, like, you know, Bram Stoker's work and a lot of vampire fiction from back in the day. And where is Transylvania located? Romania. So there you go. Also, the first, I've just mentioned this, the first line of the Romanian national anthem does have a line that's like, "Wake up, Romanians, from your sleep of the dead," or from your deathly sleep. I know it's not a reference to vampires, I understand that. That's a reference to a revolution that Romania, you know, that happened back in the day. You know, but still, vampires are typically associated with Romania and Transylvania, or way back in the day, Wallachia. And so, you know, wake up from your deathly sleep. You know, okay, so at any rate, there's Romania. Right, so now we have the Shishano Kingdom that's led by King Tacos, and this is based off of Mexico, all right? And so the literal reference in Japanese, Shishano Kingdom, Shishi no Hi, is Japanese for the Day of the Dead, or the Dia de los Muertos, Dia de los Muertos, there we go, the Day of the Dead celebration in Mexico, okay, that occurs on All Souls Day, All Saints Day, November 1st, November 2nd, and it's a celebration of the deceased. Not an idea of, like, being sad, but to celebrate, you know, your loved ones and have, like, a big party, okay? So that's the reference to the name, and then King Tacos, tacos from Mexico, there we go. Avocados from Mexico. Where did that come from? I don't know. That's just a commercial that got stuck in my head like way back in the day. But anyway, yeah. So that's the reference to Mexico, King Tacos, and I'm going to assume also one of the nations that started the world government. All right. Then we have, I think the only kingdom left that's been named and that has a direct reference is the Tajin Kingdom that's led by Queen Morlone. And this is based off of Morocco from northern Africa, okay? And tagine is a popular food from Morocco, okay? So there we go. The Tajin Kingdom led by Morone, and I think it's because her name is spelled like this and then Morocco is spelled like this, like that's where the reference comes from there. Also one of the kingdoms. So, if you include all of these kingdoms that are based off of nations that are overtly based off nations from our world, we have Alabasta based off of Egypt, Dressrosa based off of Spain, we have Drum Kingdom based off of Canada, Kano Kingdom based off of China, Bollywood Kingdom based off of United States, Roshuan Kingdom based off of Russia, Tajin Kingdom based off of Morocco, Shishano Kingdom based off of Mexico, Lulusia Kingdom based off of Romania, T the Fourth's Kingdom based off of the United Kingdom, and Ban de Dessiné's Kingdom based off of France. That gives us 11 nations, 11 kingdoms in the One Piece world, which is a lot more than 3. Actually, it would be 12 kingdoms, because you also have to include the Rosward family. They had a kingdom that they used to rule over. Could have been one of these. Could have been another one. Let's see. Goa Kingdom. Alright, so that's another one that's kind of interesting. The Goa Kingdom where Luffy grew up, alright? So, there's a few different bases for this. When it comes to Fuchsia Village, that's based off of England. I'm going off of the Rurubu One Piece basis here. The Goa Kingdom itself is actually based off of Spain, which Dressrosa is already based off of Spain, so you see the issue there. And then the Gray Terminal, which is where Luffy and Sabo and Ace grew up, that giant pile of garbage that just has, like, constant, like, you know, smoke coming off of it, that's actually based off of the slums of Manila in the Philippines, okay? It's based off of the Smoky Mountains of the Philippines, which is, like, that's not, like, a thing that Oda created, right? That's not like, oh, I'm gonna create this, you know, interesting location, like piles of garbage that people are forced to live in. No, that's a place that actually exists in our world. I think it's like a 50-meter high pile of garbage that's taken from, like, the main city of Manila and just dumped here and just accumulated over the decades. And I think it's like 1/3 of, I don't know if it's 1/3 of, like, the population of Manila or 1/3 of the population of the Philippines live below the poverty line, and a lot of them have to live in this refuse heap. It's horrible, right? But that is the basis for the Gray Terminal. And there's also a reference from the Goa Kingdom from the Netherlands as well. Oda took some references from the Netherlands. So since the United Kingdom, which includes England, is based off of T the Fourth's kingdom, and considering the Goa Kingdom is based off of, like, the Goa Kingdom, like the city itself, was designed from the architecture of Spain, from Morella, Spain, I can either go with the Goa Kingdom representing the Netherlands, or it could represent the Philippines because of the Gray Terminal, okay? And in which case, considering the Goa Kingdom, considering that Saint Jalmack did visit the Goa Kingdom, think about this way. What if Saint Jalmack's family, because we don't know Jalmack's, you know, family name, or it could be Jalmack, and in which case it is a different, you know, family, because like we have Saint Roswald, that's the head of the Roswald family, and then Saint Charlos, which Charlos is his given name and Roswald is their surname, okay? So Saint Jalmack, that could be his family name or it could be his first name. We just don't know for certain yet. What if Saint Jalmack's family did originally come from the Goa Kingdom back in the day? And so the reason he was visiting was because it's like, well, I guess I am the ancestral ruler of this place. I guess I'll go to this, you know, town in the East Blue, you know, whatever. But he was, like, not really happy about it. He's like, well, whatever. I have to go all the way out to this place in the East. You know, maybe it's because his family did have connection with it back in the day. The current king of the Goa Kingdom is King Steli, who is Sabo's half-brother. Apparently, him and the queen murdered the former king and queen of Goa. So I'm going to assume with that Goa is also another kingdom that created the world government, considering St. Jalmack. Like, why else would St. Jalmack, why else would a random, a random city in the corner of the East Blue attract the attention of a celestial dragon? Like, why would a celestial dragon go through the trouble of traveling down from Marijwa, going all the way to the East Blue on the other side of the planet just to visit this random nation? Unless St. Jalmack had some connection to said nation, okay? So there you go. So that brings us up to what, 13? Yeah. I guess 13 kingdoms there. There might be a few other kingdoms that you can reference there from the One Piece world, so go ahead and have at it. There's probably a few that I forgot to write down because there are a lot. Like I said, the Brisk Kingdom. There's other kingdoms out there that were referenced, like in the West Blue, I believe there was a place called Las Camp. There was also a place like, I forget what it was called, Centaurea from the South Blue, and that was one of the locations that the world government, not the world government, the revolutionaries liberated from the world government. And then there's other nations that are not even allied with the world government. So there could be places that connect back to, the founding of the world government as well. But for that being the case, I think I'm going to end this video here. I apologize once again for all those words that I've probably mispronounced. But, it's interesting because I like talking about other nations of the world. And, every now and then when I mention another country, people are like, woo, Tekking referenced Bangladesh or India or whatever. There are a few others. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of countries. I don't think there's actually any countries that were from South America here. So maybe a country based off of Brazil, Peru, Chile, Argentina, Bolivia. Yeah, Bolivia. No one ever talks about Bolivia, but I'm talking about Bolivia now. Take a drink if you're from Bolivia, I guess. I don't know anything about Bolivia. Tell me some fun facts about Bolivia. Let's see here. We, I think aside from Morocco and that other place that was based off of Yuba, Mali, I think those are the only locations in Africa that are referenced. So we could have some other nations that are based off of African nations, right? Oh, Egypt as well. Sorry, I'm an idiot. Yeah, Alabasta is obviously based off of Egypt. But there are a lot of countries in Africa, right? There's Zimbabwe, there's Mozambique, there's the Republic of the Congo, there's the Democratic Republic of the Congo, there's South Africa, which is actually where my Aunt Allison is from. My Uncle Dave visited South Africa way back in I think in the early 1980s and met my aunt there, and they got married there, and then they came back, and now they're living back in the States, so that's where my aunt is from. There's, did I say Zimbabwe? There's Zimbabwe. There's Botswana. So yeah, there's a bunch of nations in Africa that could be referenced here, and then a bunch more in Asia, obviously. Wano is based off of Japan. I felt remiss if I didn't mention that. Wano is based off of Japan, but Wano is not allied with the world government, therefore would not have been one of the 20 families to start the world government. But Wano is, of course, based off of Japan. Australia! We don't have anything referenced from, like, Oceania here, like the Solomon Islands or Fiji. Australia, of course, New Zealand. So you can have, places in One Piece referenced those countries, right? And by the way, I actually think it was stated in Rurubu One Piece that the Tontada Kingdom was based off of the set for Lord of the Rings for Hobbiton that was filmed in New Zealand. So it was a movie set that was in New Zealand, but still a reference to New Zealand. Take a drink if you're from New Zealand. Okay. But yeah, a lot of other nations all over the world that could be incorporated into One Piece. And we'll see if later on, I'm sure maybe at some point Oda is probably going to at least give us a list of the kingdoms. We might see like a plaque or some kind of thing. When everybody was walking into Marijwa, when they got to the top of the gondola and they were walking on top of the steps into Marijwa, on top of the Red Line proper, there were these statues, the statues that represented the 20 kings. So maybe somewhere in Castle Pangaea, out in front of it or something, there's like a big tablet or something, and it says the names of all of the kingdoms, and maybe Oda will show us something like that. He doesn't have to name drop all of them, but he could just have, here's a big, tablet, and it has all the kingdoms on it, and who knows, the Tajin Kingdom, the Shishano Kingdom, the Prudence Kingdom, the Kano Kingdom, they might be referenced on that tablet, and that's how we'll find out, like, oh, here's a comprehensive list of all 20 of them, right? At any rate, thanks for watching the video, everybody. Tekking, signing out.